What's up, everybody? This is Blake&VishSports. Sports. I want to say episode 34. And we got a special kind of episode for you guys today. We're doing something a little different. Instead of talking about, topics in the NFL and Niners topics, which are the things we usually do, we're changing it up today. We're going to rank the best running backs in the NFL, or our top 5 running backs in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people know what my number one is going to be just because I tweeted about this. Maybe I want to say yesterday there was a PFF post, but Blake, I don't think you know who my number one is. So it'll be interesting to see how these rankings turn out, where we differ, where we agree. But otherwise, we will also be giving our predictions on what we think the Niners' final running back depth chart is.
Yep.
So we're doing a couple of things here today. It'll be nice and light, 40, 45 minutes. Thank you guys for joining us. Blake, what's going on?
Nothing too much. Just happy the week's over, I guess. Nothing too much. Excited summer. The weather's actually getting nice here in the Chicagoland area, and it's starting to feel like summer is fast approaching. So that's always good.
Yeah, of course. My man, Amin, the nicest guy in our comments section, always throwing compliments. What's up? Mariah, you already know you're the GOAT. What's going on? And then, of course, Jamal, we got to get you on again. Jamal, what's good with you? My man, Gabriel, he was in the comment section with me and Croc today. What's up, Gabriel? But yeah, so Blake, which I'll give you a choice today because this is a happy Friday. This is a chill Friday, right? Do you want to start off by giving our Niners running back predictions, or do you want to get straight into the nitty-gritty and start ranking these running backs in the NFL?
I'm thinking I really want to start ranking Jeff Wilson Jr. and Wayne Gallman and all the Niners. Because, I mean, would it really be a Blake and Vish Sports episode without a Niners topic? I don't think it would be. So,
touche.
Niners.
Touche. So, let's get right into it. We're obviously 4 months away from the NFL season. There's a lot that can change between now and today. But Blake, looking at the Niners' current running backs, right, you have to start off with, obviously, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, third-round pick who they traded up for, Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell they picked in the 6th round, Wayne Gallman, who they signed, who was a solid player for the Giants last year, JaMychal Hasty, who showed a little bit of something when he was on the field. What do you think is going to be kind of the pecking order for this crowded running back room next year, or at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to start from just go 1 and then just to 5. So my first one is going to be, I think, probably different than yours, but I'm going the guy they took in the 3rd round, Trey Sermon. And I could honestly see this going him or Mostert, and I'd be totally fine with either. This is more of just my preference if I was, ranking these guys and who I think is going to be the best for the system. But so Trey Sermon, obviously the Niners traded up to get him. So that means they clearly had their eyes set on him and really wanted him. He played in a scheme or ran in a scheme when he was running. That's kind of the zone or wide zone. And he can do that really well, obviously. I think he had 300 yards against Northwestern or some ridiculous amount where he just actually killed them. So that's cool. But the main reason why I think Sermon is the guy is what's important in the wide zone is being able to have the explosiveness and burst to actually hit the hole that's there. And Trey Sermon has elite burst. Now, he did have a slower 40 than most would have thought. Maybe his breakaway speed and long stride speed is not the best, but I think his burst and just pure explosion is insanely good, and that's what's going to matter for the Niners. Mostert's more of the home run guy. I don't know if Sermon will be that due to his lack of long distance speed, but I have Sermon and then Mostert. And then we go to the guy they just picked up, Wayne Gallman. More of just an all-around type of back. I don't think brings one skill that's just, super elite, but he's just pretty good at everything. And then after that, I would go Jeff Wilson Jr. and Elijah Mitchell.
Okay, so you think they're keeping 4 running backs, and those are the 4 plus Kyle Juszczyk?
I listed 5, I think.
Right, you had Gallman too, right? My bad. So
Yeah,
you
I had
think they're
Gallman.
keeping 5 plus Kyle Juszczyk? That's just your
Yeah,
guess for right now.
yeah,
So this is a really hard position to rank. I actually agree with you 100% in terms of Trey Sermon, right? He has incredible burst and he has incredible vision to see the cutback lane. He has really good contact balance. All these like really important things to be a really good running back.
Mhm.
I just think that Raheem Mostert, when he plays, has been such an effective player for the 49ers. I think
That's
that
true.
Niners fans tend to overrate how good he actually is, but you can't overrate the effect he has. He's been a very good player when he plays for the 49ers. So I'm going to keep him as the one guy in terms of the running back depth chart in terms of my guess. Now, do I think Trey Sermon probably deserves to get more carries than Raheem Mostert? Yeah, I think Raheem Mostert's touches need to be limited just because he's so explosive where you need to get him the ball 10 to 12 times every game. Like you have to, and he'll create big
Yeah,
plays. But clearly, he's shown that his body, he runs high, right? And it's difficult for him to take on that level of punishment to be a running back number one. So I would go Mostert one. Everything that you said about Trey Sermon, I 100% agree with. I would have
mhm.
him at 2 in the running back depth chart. I also have Wayne Gallman at 3. I thought
Okay.
Wayne Gallman was good for the Giants
He
last year, and I
was.
think he brings a little different element than Jeff Wilson. I think Jeff Wilson's a little redundant actually with Trey Sermon,
Yep.
and so that's why I would go Wayne Gallman at 3. Then I would go Jeff Wilson at 4. And then truth be told, I haven't watched a lot of Elijah Mitchell, so I don't want to rank him over
Yeah.
Jermichael Hasty without that, but it would be between those two for the 5th guy. But I think Mostert and Sermon are a clear head above the
Yep.
other two. Although Wilson, obviously, he's a fan favorite. He's a stud when he plays and all of that. I just think stylistically, him and Sermon are a little redundant, with Sermon just being the more gifted, physically gifted player.
Agreed. And I think Wayne Gallman was actually a really good pickup. Just overall, as a guy who, he was able to stay healthy. He was able to consistently produce behind a really not so good Giants O line. And they did have, Saquon obviously got injured and stuff, but having someone who's been consistent and has shown he can play, over 10 games or however, I think he definitely played over 10 games. He played a lot of games last year, started because Saquon got injured week 1 or 2. So I just think the fact that something that the Niners have not had is a healthy running back in a elongated period of time, and Gallman showing that he has been able to do that is why I'd probably have him at 3. And he's just solid. He's nothing crazy. He's not gonna, be the fan favorite that maybe Jeff Wilson is, but he's a really complimentary back as the number 3 guy.
Yeah, that's what I think he is. Like, he's not like overly explosive. He's not a home run hitter or anything, but he's just a really solid, consistent running back. And I think where he's a little different from Jeff Wilson is also kind of a bruising one cut style runner. I don't think Wayne Gallman is even really a one cut runner. Like Jeff Wilson's probably a better fit, honestly, for the wide zone than him.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think that, again, it just comes back to skill set. Like, look at the Patriots, right? It's not about having 5 elite backs. It's about having 5 backs who could do totally different things, right? Like Rex Burkhead was kind of their short guy and power running back. Sony Michel was kind of their all-around back. James White has been their receiving back for years.
Forever.
So just like that, right? Mostert's the explosive running back. Sermon's kind of the grinder, but he also has a ton of burst and can hit the hole really hard and all of that. And then Gallman's kind of that all-around kind of guy who can do a couple of different things. But that's just my take on it. I don't know. It's seemingly the NFL isn't that high on Wayne Gallman because he went through like 4 weeks of free agency without being signed. But I really think he wasn't that bad of a player. I really don't.
I mean, he averaged like 4 yards a carry. That's pretty solid. And he was consistently like good enough to where the Giants didn't feel the need that he wasn't completely worthless, basically. And he held his own. He wasn't, obviously Saquon Barkley, but you could do a lot worse than Wayne Gallman in the NFL.
Right. He was competent. He was very competent. And someone's asking, it's not that we have Mitchell making or not making the 53. Right now, the way we look at it is that Sermon and Mostert are clear 1 and 2, and then Wilson, and I personally think Gallman. Now, again, full disclosure, I haven't really watched Mitchell that much. That's on my to-do list for later in the summer. So maybe I'll watch Mitchell, and all of a sudden he will be number 2 on this list or something like that. But right now, the way I see it is that it's I feel like Wilson also is right there in the conversation. I just think Gallman's a little more diverse in his skill set. But if you're talking like actual players, like it's Mostert, Sermon, Wilson, and then I like Gallman. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy for liking Gallman.
Yeah, I'm interested to see because the Niners always shuffle running backs. Like that is a guarantee. And who's ever back there does a good job because I think Shanahan has a really good scheme. And, obviously the run blocking for the Niners is exceptional. You slander Mike McGlinchey all you want, but he's a really good run blocker. So you have 5 guys on the O-line that I would say are probably above, at least at minimum average, and some are elite run blockers. So that's always really nice for any running back. And then Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of good blockers for the 49ers.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So that's our early predictions, I would say, for the running back depth chart for the Niners. This probably is subject to change, but now, before camp, before anything, before knowing anything, in my opinion and Blake's opinion, that's kind of the order that we see it for now. So now let's get into why we're here. And we're here to rank the top 5 best running backs in the NFL. And so, Blake, before I just give you the floor and ask you who your number 5 running back in the NFL is there anybody you want to mention that didn't make your list that you kind of considered? Or
Yeah, there's a couple guys. There's one main one that I'm mad I had to leave him off because I think very highly of him, and that's Nick Chubb. Now, you could have him as a top 4 guy, honestly. I think 4 to 6 is pretty interchangeable. But I had Chubb at 6. He just missed the list. But you talk about if he gets downhill going fast, like you're not tackling him. And when you have him behind the Browns O-line and then Kareem Hunt subbing in for him, I mean, it's actually just a little bit unfair with how good those two are in that line. But he missed my list. And then another guy, Aaron Jones, Packer. I was surprised he signed back. Explosive home run hitter, adds an element to the Packers that no one else on the team adds. And it's just awesome watching him. So he's kind of my little bias guy that I just want to throw in there. But yeah, who do you have, Vish?
Yeah, I don't think that's bias at all. He was right there for me too. And he's Aaron Jones is he didn't make the list, but I think he's closer than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah.
He is really, really good. But he didn't make my list. And then the other guy for me, and this is going to be crazy, right? People are going to get mad about this. But I actually had Nick Chubb making my list, and there was 2 guys I didn't have. One people are going to get mad about, one people won't care. The one people won't care about is Joe Mixon. I think very highly of Joe Mixon. I think part of why Joe Mixon hasn't looked that good is, one, Zach Taylor doesn't have like the most diverse run scheme, and they didn't run the ball a lot last year with Joe Mixon. And then the other thing is that's a terrible, terrible, terrible offensive line, run blocking. I mean, you try running behind Bobby Hart, you're running into Bobby Hart because Bobby Hart only gets driven backwards. So I think Joe Mixon's as talented as anybody in the NFL, honestly. He's a fantastic runner. He's a great receiver. He's got power. He's got speed. He's got everything you look for. He's just doesn't have the production of the other guys. And then finally, the third guy is Saquon Barkley. And that sounds a little bit of a hot take just given where Saquon Barkley was drafted and just given his reputation. Obviously, Barkley is an incredible receiver. He's a great running back, and he's incredibly athletic. He's just like Barry Sanders, in the way he makes people miss and all of that, and his explosiveness and all of that. The reason I didn't pick Saquon Barkley is because I don't think Saquon Barkley is a consistent in between the tackles runner. And for me, I grew up watching Frank Gore. So I prefer the guy who gets 4 yards, 8 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards than the guy who goes 2, -1, -3, -4, -5, and then busts out a 78-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I just think Saquon Barkley, of the 5 guys on my list, is the least consistent in between the tackles runner. And that's why he didn't make the list. And real quick, somebody's asking. So this list is based on this season a little bit, but it's also based on if people are healthy. So obviously Christian McCaffrey is going to be very, very high on both of our lists, even though he was healthy for only a short amount of time last season. So without further ado, Blake, who's your 5th best running back in the NFL?
Yeah, so you mentioned him already. I had Saquon at 5. Obviously, he was taken number 2. This is where I had the hardest. This was probably the hardest spot for me because I was between Saquon and Chubb, and I was like, who do I want? But my main reason for going with Saquon is I value receiving out of the running back significantly. Like if he can't run routes, that is tough for me. And Nick Chubb is not the best receiving running back. He really only gets stuff off of screens, which I wouldn't consider that to be, some great receiving ability. But Saquon is pretty good in the passing game. And I think you mentioned it, just maybe not the most consistent between the tackles, but when he gets outside in open field, it's like it reminds me of AP in the sense that he can just take it to the house any given play. And that's why I like him a lot. And that's why I have him at 5. And also the fact that he's not running behind the O-line that's good by any stretch of the imagination is also just kind of impressive. And if he didn't get injured last year, he would have gone off. In 2019, if he didn't get injured, he would have been right up there rushing yards wise with any of them.
Right. And those points are totally true. And obviously Saquon Barkley is an incredible player. So like I sound a little crazy when he's not there, but he's right there. I would say there's 6 elite guys and he's the 6th elite guy for me. And I went with Chubb over him. And for me with Chubb, it's just that, Chubb obviously runs behind the best offensive line in the NFL. Saquon has not been able to have that fortune. He's been rushing behind poor offensive linemen. But the thing that separates Chubb from Saquon to me is that obviously the receiving Saquon has a significant advantage. It's just that I think Chubb is better in between the tackles. And I think Chubb, especially because they run a wide zone based offense, I think Chubb sees the cutback lane better. And I think Chubb and I think the thing that separates Chubb a little more than Saquon is that I just think that he's a little more north and south than Saquon. And I just prefer that. Honestly, it's just preference. I just prefer a player like Nick Chubb to Saquon Barkley. Obviously, Saquon Barkley's numbers are inarguable. His athletic ability is inarguable. His ability as a receiver, you can't take any of those things away from him. He's really a special player. The lack of consistency for me with Saquon Barkley in between the tackles just makes me want somebody like Nick Chubb more, just because I know every time I hand it off to Nick Chubb, I'm going to get 4 or 5 yards. With Saquon, even if the play is poor, if the run play is poorly blocked, which it is a lot of the times with the Giants and stuff, it's just that there's this chance that he might lose 2 yards. Yeah. And and the other thing I think is, even though Saquon is built and he's really a big guy, I think Nick Chubb runs with more power in between the tackles. I don't think Saquon's really a punishing runner. And that's where when you get late in the game in a fourth quarter and you got to run a team out, I think Nick Chubb is the back you want over Saquon Barkley. So I have Nick Chubb at 5 instead of Saquon.
I agree with that. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but Nick Chubb's yards per carry in the fourth quarter is 10. He averages 10 yards a carry in the fourth quarter. That is just ridiculous.
So I actually
heard of.
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that stat, but when I was going back and watching Nick Chubb before we had to do this, the reason I said that in the fourth quarter is because the eye test was just like, wow, Nick Chubb every fourth quarter is just breaking off runs. So I'm glad there's actually a stat that confirms that, because I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, the later on in the game it gets, just the better he gets. And it kind of reminds me, I think Zeke was kind of like that his rookie year, where the later into the game, he just gets big, stronger and more powerful because everyone's getting tired, but he's just, an ox and he's just running people over, run tackles. And that's where Chubb is definitely better than Saquon. And I guess that's more of a preference thing. And I guess it depends on your offense, because if you want the guy that's going to get pretty much a guaranteed 5 yards every time he even gets some semblance of, a good rushing lane, Chubb's your guy. If you want more of a home run hitter, maybe a better receiver, more versatile in that sense, Saquon's your guy. So, yeah, I think those two are certainly interchangeable.
Right. Like Chubb, if you block a run for 5, he'll get you 15. Saquon, if you block a run for 5, sometimes he might lose a couple yards. but then one time you might block a run for 2 and he might take it for 7.
He's going to the yard, yeah.
Right, it's a little more home run hit or miss. And then the one thing I did want to say, I'm glad you brought up Zeke and just that idea of stylistic preference, because I think that is really important to drive home, because that's where I think our rankings will differ just based on our own stylistic preferences. Yes. And I'm glad you brought up Zeke, because Zeke is a perfect example. If you asked me who I thought the best running back was from 2016 to 2020, every single one of those years, I would have told you I think Ezekiel Elliott is the best running back in the NFL. And it's solely because of that reason. Just the consistency of being able to hand the ball off to him and him wearing a team out and all of that. I feel like that single-handedly can win you games. And that's why I have Nick Chubb above Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Who'd you have at 4?
Ooh, you're going to me, huh? I got to go with Alvin Kamara at 4. I think Alvin Kamara is probably the second best all-around back in terms of when you stack up receiving and running in the entire NFL. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is the best all-around back in the NFL. I don't think anybody would argue with that when you go rushing, receiving, but I would say Alvin Kamara second. Incredibly elusive. He's not, I wouldn't say he's fast per se, but he is got explosive in terms of being able to make people's miss. He's very slippery. He's very difficult to tackle. He has incredible balance and contact balance. And I think what makes Kamara special is people don't realize how difficult he is to get a clean hit on. He does an incredible job of moving his body and maneuvering himself through the hole, where that's why he breaks so many tackles, because you can't get really a clean shot on him. You only hit half of him, or you hit a fourth of his body and he just bounces off. So just an incredible all-around back. Obviously, I think he was 900 rushing, receiving last year. So his numbers kind of speak for themselves. Oh, he was 900, 700, but he was right around there. Just a touchdown machine, great patience, great vision. He's everything you want in a running back. He's phenomenal, and that's why he's my 4th best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, so I think this is the one we're definitely going to agree on. I had him 4 as well. I think you mentioned it too, like with his balance, like I feel like he doesn't like throw people off of him, but people just like will hit his body and bounce off for whatever reason. I don't know. I know the one example was that, do you remember the play against the Washington football team when it was like a juggling catch and 4 dudes were in the area and like they all got their hand on him, but he just never looked like he lost like balance at all. Like that was ridiculous. I think receiving wise, he's probably the second best, and just you could throw him in the slot. You can throw screens to him. You can pretty much do anything and he'll make something out of nothing. I know you were watching the Sunday night game where he bounced off of like 4 tackles against the Packers. And that play was, he just caught it in the backfield and made 4 dudes miss and just took it like 50 yards. And
we watched that together.
When you have that on your team, it's just, I don't know, it's demoralizing when your defense is just like, well, like, how do you actually stop that? Because it's not like it's a good scheme or anything. It's just this guy's better than everyone else, and he's just going to make a play. So he's insanely good at that. And, yeah, my only thing knocking him down for me is you would want him to have more carries, I think, is the only thing. And the fact that, can he take 250 carries? Can he take 300 carries? I don't know if he could. He took, I think, 180 last year. And he is more of a Swiss Army knife than other guys, I would say. So that's my only reason I have him at 4, but he is insanely good.
For me, it's that same thing, right? Like, he can get into a game and have 20, 25 touches and carry an offense. I mean, we've seen him carry an offense the last couple of years, because there's games where Drew Brees is just checking that ball down so quickly to him, and he's just out in the open field making people miss and make it happen. But at the end of the day, to me, and the reason why I always prefer the better runner over the receiver, because at the end of the day, this is a running back. Yeah. So, and that's why he's number 4 for me, because in terms of all around, he's probably number 2 behind Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. But in terms of being a pure runner that you just give him 25, 30 carries, game in, game out, and he carries your offense, that's not really him. So that's why I have him at 4 as well.
Yep. Who did you have at 3? I think this is kind of, we all have me and you have the same big 3 guys, but I think our rankings and where we have them is going to be drastic, because I think these guys are a little bit notch ahead of everyone else.
I agree with you. I think that we talked about how close it is between like 4 through 7, 4 through 6, all of
Mhm.
that. I think these three are cut above the rest of the running backs in
Yeah.
the NFL. I think they're the three best by far. And so at number 3, it took a lot of deliberation for me. I kind of have a set number 1, so 2 and 3 was really hard, but I have Christian McCaffrey at number
Mhm.
3. And it sounds like a knock, right? Because he's so incredible. I mean, he had a thousand season. That's amazing. Whenever he plays, he dominates. He's actually underrated, I would say, as an in between the tackles runner.
Yeah.
When he first came into the NFL, that wasn't really his forte, but he's a way better in between the tackles runner than he's given credit for. He's a legitimately excellent in
Yeah.
between the tackles runner. He's better than Saquon Barkley by a considerable amount in between the tackles, in my opinion. He's obviously a phenomenal receiver. He's essentially a slot receiver. He's incredible in the screen game. He's an unbelievable running back, and having him number 3, it feels a little sacrilegious, but I think what really got me is that it's a little bit more recency bias too, just because he was hurt last
Yeah.
year, and the two guys at the top had just unbelievable seasons. I mean, one of the guys had like an MVP season basically. So that's why I have Christian McCaffrey 3. I know he's probably going to be higher on your list just by listening to you talk about this, how much you're
Yeah.
valuing the receiving element, but obviously an incredible player.
Definitely. Yeah. So I do have him a little higher, and I'm with you on saying this guy's 3 because I think most people have this guy 1. And for me, number 3 is Derrick Henry. And it's mainly due to the receiving aspect and the fact that he goes off the field on third downs. Like he's just like not present if it's like 3rd and 10. And for me, that's where I'm like, okay, if you're the best of the best, like I don't even think you should come. Like there should be points in the time where like you're not even coming off the field. You can just play every down. Obviously that's a very idealistic way of thinking because players get injured and you don't want them to get too many touches and all that. But that's my logic there. I think pure running, he's probably the best. I really do. Being with the Titans, their offense is just pretty much just built around him getting, 25, 30 carries a game. I think he had like 380 carries or something crazy like that last year. It was like 60 more than the next guy, which was Cook. So the fact that he can handle such a big workload and actually take on that many carries is ridiculous. And I think open field, it's really tough to just even bring him down. But my thing with him is he has to get started because if he just keeps getting hit in the backfield, like he doesn't have that just, I guess, maybe agility because he runs kind of upright. So that's where I say, okay, I would rather have a more nimble guy than him. But if you have him at number 1 or 2, like I can't really like debate you too hard on it because I completely understand. And I think if there was a guy that you wanted on your team that you just wanted to feature your offense, give him 30 carries a game and win that way, like you couldn't ask for someone better than Derrick Henry. But for me, if he does get shut down in the run game, what can he do in the pass game? And the answer is really not much. So that's where I have a hard time with him, and why I have him lower than the others.
So I have him number 2. So let's just transition straight there.
Awesome.
And I actually agree with a lot of your negatives, right? The upright running style and the fact that for such a big guy, he's not actually like a power running back. And what do I mean by that? Like Frank Gore at 250 pounds was a legitimate power running back. Like you pull your guards, you're bringing your fullback. Frank Gore is getting really low and it's going to be a collision in the hole. He's going to make somebody miss and then he's going to run through somebody. Henry is more, he uses incredible vision to cut and find space, and he starts throwing people off of him once he really gets moving, because once he gets moving, he's one of the faster players in the NFL.
Yes.
It's just while he's getting set up, he's not going to run through somebody and get 5 yards, out of a run that's not really blocked that well. He uses his vision and he finds the hole, and then once he gets going through the hole, goodbye, see ya. He's throwing people off of him. I think that if you would ask me, even at the end of the season, if I thought Derrick Henry was better than Christian McCaffrey, I would have said no way, just because of Christian McCaffrey's entire body of work and like you said, the receiving. Once I went back and watched a little bit today, especially in preparation for this, I just couldn't argue with what he did. He had 2 games against the Texans that got him about 500 yards rushing. Yeah, he had one more game against the Jaguars that added 200 yards rushing. So 3 terrible run defenses. But then you go see him put 33 once and 178 and a touchdown on the Indianapolis Colts, who had an excellent defense last year. That's where I just have to sit back and say, like, yeah, I can't put, especially based on when you had the recency bias of this season and you talk about Derrick Henry and his incredible vision and how fast he is and how strong he is, and the fact that the Titans run game isn't that diverse. They don't run that many different runs. It's really the one or two of the same runs, and Derrick Henry is just so good at running them.
And to the right, just hand it off.
Yeah, inside zone. It's literally inside zone. They run inside zone to the right and inside zone to the left, and Derrick Henry is just so good at it. It's just like, okay, fine. Like, I can't argue against this type of production, and that's why he's number 2 for me.
And I think another thing to bring up too was their run in 2019 when they made the AFC Championship game. Like, he dominated every team, like the Ravens. Who else they played? The Patriots, and even against the Chiefs. Like, there's he looked like the best player on the field. When the offense was out there, and it was all through him. And the fact that he was able to, like, I don't want to say, I hate saying the word carry because it's really hard for a running back to carry, but like, he kind of was carrying that offense out there. And Tannehill's really good too, but Derrick Henry being there is the main reason their offense was doing much of anything. And that's where I say, like, wow, this dude is really good. But yeah, I still have him at 3, even though I'm, I think me and you are both very high on both of them, or all 3 of these guys. So that's what I'll say on that. And then I guess I can go with my 2. I had Dalvin Cook. I think pure runner-wise, he's probably 2nd or 3rd. I'd say him, Chubb, and Henry are just like pure running, only running. Those 3 are the best. I think the main thing with Cook is he is the power type where you think of Frank Gore and like maybe a little lower center of gravity, and he just pushes the pile. People bounce off of him. Yeah, he has that. And then the vision for like, making back cuts and all that, he is insanely good at that too. So I think Cook's number 2. He has a little more receiving than Henry, which is maybe why I have him there. And it's not close to McCaffrey or, Kamara, but it's a little better than not, nothing besides screen. So I have him at 2.
Yeah, that's a very fair argument. And I mean, again, it transitions beautifully because he's your number 2. He's my number 1 running back in the NFL. I think when it comes to agility, when it comes to consistently getting positive runs every single play, when it comes to creating holes out of nothing, when it comes to just vision, patience, everything, I think Dalvin Cook is the best running back in the NFL. I think what Dalvin Cook does in terms of, right, like Minnesota, obviously another wide zone based offense, right? It's funny, like 3 out of my 5 best running backs are playing a wide zone based offense. Like, wow, that does help running backs just a little bit, I think. But I think Dalvin Cook's, you talked about it, right? The vision, the quickness, the agility, the fact that he's also very difficult to get a clean shot on because he's so elusive. He's so agile. And then the fact that what separates him to me from other guys like that is the fact that he can also go 80 yards for a touchdown. I think as a receiver, he's actually really underrated. I think he could be better in a different offense. It's just that Minnesota doesn't feature him as a receiver because they're a play action, throw the ball a little more down the field offense with a lot of 2-man, 3-man routes. And that features Jefferson and Adam Thielen. It's not like they put Dalvin Cook in the slot and ask him to shake a running back, a linebacker out of his boots and go catch it, which I think he actually has the athletic skill set to do. But yeah, for me, and then obviously with Dalvin Cook, health is an issue, right? He's got a smaller frame. He misses a couple games every year, but I just think when you add in his power, his physicality, his quickness, his speed, everything that you're looking for me, he's the best running back in the NFL. I would have probably had him right there last year. I think he's unbelievable. I don't think Minnesota has a good offensive line either. I think it's very, very bad. I think it's okay run blocking, terrible pass blocking. And I think Dalvin Cook makes that run blocking offensive line look better than okay because he creates so many different holes just with his ability in terms of his vision and his quickness and his ability to get small and find space. He's unbelievable to me. And I think he's the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I didn't even mention his speed, but I would say like top line, straight line speed for like 50 yards, I would have him up there with almost anyone because it feels like he never, if he breaks past,
never gets run
he's
down.
not getting caught. He's not going to get caught.
I would say the only people that are faster over that 50 yards is Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and maybe Derrick Henry. But it's close between him and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, because Derrick Henry needs a little more like free range to actually get going. But once he gets going, it's like special. But Cook's more of like, he puts his leg in the ground, cuts up field, and then he's off. So Cook's, I can't argue with Cook. Obviously, I'll bring up the Packers here. He dropped over 200 yards and I think 4 touchdowns. Him and Mostert did that. Both have done that to our defense. So awesome look for the Green Bay Packers defense there. But not to digress too much, my number 1 was McCaffrey. I'm sure, the way I've just been talking about receiving, you could have guessed that McCaffrey was my 1. So I value that a lot, clearly. And my main reason behind that is the fact that if you are getting shut down in the run game, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do to counteract that? Because, if you're playing the Buccaneers in the playoffs and they're the best run defense in the league when Vita Vea is in there in that D line, how are you going to manufacture yards using your running back? And in that instance, I'd say, okay, I can put Christian McCaffrey in the slot and he can just beat a linebacker. He can probably beat safeties too and slot corners. So that's why I have him at 1. I think as a pure runner, he's kind of underrated in that sense, in the fact that you mentioned it earlier. One of his big knocks was, can Christian McCaffrey run between the tackles in the NFL? Well, it turns out he's actually very powerful, strong, and he can do that without too much issue. Now, he did get injured this past year, but all the years prior, he's played the majority of the games and has been dominant. And then another thing, too, I just wanted to bring up is making something out of nothing. In the receiving game, when he was having, Kyle Allen, Cam, just all the quarterbacks that he's had over the years, and they just dump it down to him and he makes 3 guys miss and picks up 15 yards. Not many people can do that. And I would even argue there's a very short list. I don't even know if all the guys on our top 5 can do that. So that's where I think he's just different than the others. And like I keep saying, you could argue the 1 through 3 and switch it up any which way, and I would have no complaints. But preference-wise, I got McCaffrey at 1.
Yeah, and can you really argue with having Christian McCaffrey at 1? He's unbelievable. He is unbelievable. He is really, really good at every single thing. But when you talked about the screen thing, I would say him, Saquon Barkley, and Alvin Kamara are the 3 that really stand out. They get thrown a little flare or a little swing pass, late in the down. The quarterback just dumps it off to them, and bang, they get 8 yards by making 3 people miss in the open field. But yeah, for me, obviously, I didn't have him at 1, but man, how could I argue it? He is so good. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up our list. So Blake, your list was, you had Barkley at 5, Alvin Kamara at 4, Henry at 3, Dalvin Cook at 2, and Christian McCaffrey at 1. I had a little more unorthodox list. I think yours will be a little more closer to the national fan kind of consensus.
Maybe.
Mine is a little unorthodox. I went Dalvin Cook 1, Derrick Henry 2, Christian McCaffrey 3, Alvin Kamara 4, Nick Chubb 5. If you guys want to see our reasoning for why we said these things, obviously you can go back and rewatch this video. It'll be up on our channel. We'll definitely be posting this separately and posting the Niners running back depth chart predictions separately as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Maybe we can take a couple questions before we go, or Blake, do you?
Yeah, there was this one, and we haven't talked about this, Vish, but so Gabrielle said, crazy Zeke didn't make the top 5. He played injured last season. That is true. Behind an offensive line that got 2 QBs injured in Prescott and Dalton. Vish, does that sound familiar?
I don't know what he's compared. Maybe the Niners offensive line. I just think it's just beyond the offensive line, right? I had Nick Chubb at 5, and Nick Chubb plays behind the best offensive line in the NFL. He plays by far behind the best offensive line of these other backs we name. You brought up Saquon Barkley, right? If we were thinking of offensive line, Saquon Barkley's offensive line that he's had to run behind, and Nick Chubb's offensive line that he's had to run behind don't even compare. But you also have to look at the player itself and forget injuries. In 2020, Zeke or 2019, Zeke also was lacking that explosive first step that he once had. Runs that Alvin Cook and Nick Chubb and Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara would take for 80 yards, Zeke was taking for 20 yards. So that if he doesn't have that explosiveness, he's not as powerful, I would say, as he once was. You know, he's not breaking tackles. He's not as sudden, so he's taking more bigger hits. Like before, Zeke used to be like these other guys, really tough to hit because he had this subtle quickness to him. So you couldn't get a clean shot on him, but he would actually just plow you. I think Zeke is missing that now too. And then the other thing with Zeke, and the other thing for me, is he had a fumbling problem last year.
Yeah.
Great running backs can't fumble.
He fumbled 6 times.
Yeah.
That is a lot for – I mean, I remember, you know, AP was one of the guys who was that good, but he fumbled too. I wanted to add too, with the explosiveness, he obviously, you know, plays a very like brutal and, you know, demanding on the body style of football where he just lowers his shoulder and will try to run who's ever there over. You remember his rookie year when he was going with Cam Chancellor and the Legion of Boom was still kind of there, and in that matchup, like, he was getting the better of Cam Chancellor, and like actually when he would put his shoulder down, like he would move him back, and you just don't see that. But I think his body's wearing down a little bit, and the lack of explosiveness is definitely like concerning to me, where like any of those guys on the top 5 that we mentioned, they have really, really good explosiveness. Sorry. Zeke does not. The last 3 years, these are his longest runs. 2018, 41 yards. 2019, 33 yards. 2020, 31 yards. His longest run was 31 yards. Now, he is more of a grinded out type of guy, but all the guys aforementioned in our list all had that ability to, you know, take it the yard, take it 50, 60 yards. And that's where I'm like, okay, this is kind of concerning, the fact that after his first contract, he's already slowing down a little bit. And once Prescott was gone, I mean, like, I understand your offense isn't as good, but to be like actually like bad, like their offense was horrible and he was not really, you know, doing much to help. And then for Tony Pollard comes in against the Niners, and the dude just looks like the reincarnation of Barry Sanders for no good reason. Like Pollard played way better that one game than Zeke did in the majority of the games once the quarterbacks went down. So that's concerning to me too.
It's an eye test thing too. Like if you go back and watch Zeke Elliott this season, when you watch Tony Pollard behind the same offensive line, it looks different. Pollard looks more explosive, and he looks like he's seeing holes better than Zeke Elliott. And the other thing with Zeke Elliott is that, like, you bring up this offensive line thing, and obviously their run scheme isn't like overly creative and all of that. But you take rookie year or second year Zeke Elliott and you put him in the same situation behind the Dallas Cowboys, they don't finish 4-12. Rookie year Zeke Elliott, you would have been able to, you give him the ball 25 times and he would have just won you one of those games because he would just wear a defense out and he would get one run where he could break it and all of that. Zeke Elliott is just not the same player that he was in college in his rookie year and his second year. And it's just what happens. I mean, Todd Gurley 2 years ago was as good as Zeke Elliott, and both of them were probably the 2 best running backs in the NFL. Now look, same thing with Le'Veon Bell. So yeah, a lot of this is obviously subject to change, but I don't think there's any way Zeke Elliott is even in the top 6 or 7 backs in the NFL, let alone the 5. To me, he's not better than Saquon Barkley, who wasn't in my 5, and he's not better than Aaron Jones, who wasn't in my 5. And hell, I wouldn't even say he's better than Joe Mixon, who was also not in my 5.
Maybe Josh Jacobs, you could throw a name in there. There's other guys too that are in that same realm with him, but I'm with you. I love Zeke. I really did. There was a running joke in my fantasy league that for some reason I always ended up with him. It was like 3 years running, and like this past year I traded for him because I had to get him, of course. But obviously, just like it's watching him, because I'd watch him a lot because, you know, obviously he's like your number one pick and stuff, and he's just progressively gotten a little worse. And that's just kind of how running backs are and why teams are maybe hesitant to pay them. When you look at the best running backs in the league 3 years ago, your list would probably be like David Johnson, Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, Zeke. Those guys aren't – I wouldn't even say near the top 5 anymore. which is, it's just kind of sad too, because you're like, wow, like those were guys that you loved watching, and now, due to injuries and their bodies wearing down, they're just not there anymore.
I agree. I 100% agree. Yeah. I think that's ultimately what it is. And with Derek, with Derrick Henry, we might see it soon. With Dalvin Cook, we could see it soon. With Christian McCaffrey, we could see it soon too. So we'll see. And then we'll answer this before we go. The second fastest running back in the NFL to me is Matt Breida. So that one's pretty straightforward to me. I think he is by far the second fastest running back in the NFL. Blake, do you have any other?
Well, there's a name that we're missing, and he's not quite a running back. But Daniel Jones clocked in at over 21 miles an hour.
Oh, good point. Obviously.
The Eagles.
Right.
And he was a little fast for his own feet. He eventually stumbled and fell over, but that was crazy.
True.
That was one of the fastest running times in the league. And you know who else was? Devin McCourty, 29-year-old Devin McCourty. He had a pick six against the Dolphins. It was a primetime game. I think it was Monday night or something. And he had one of the I think it was at the time the fastest time ever.
No way.
Yeah. It was Devin. It was the Devin McCourty. Jason McCourty's the corner, right? And Devin McCourty.
Yeah, Devin's the safety. Devin's the borderline Hall of Famer. Yeah.
He's the one who's been there forever. Yeah. Devin McCourty. Yeah, I know it's crazy to say, but he jumped a route against, I think it was the Dolphins. And he had one of the fastest times ever. But it's kind of
because I'm not saying Devin isn't fast, right? Devin's hella fast. That's why he's a phenomenal free safety, and he played corner as a rookie too and stuff. But I would expect the fastest guys to be if you're talking DBs, to be Jalen Ramsey, who just runs with Tyreek Hill and DK Metcalf with effortless ease. But wow, Jair Alexander would be up there.
Yeah, Jair's really fast. So Devin McCourty reached a top speed of 22.05 miles an hour on his 84-yard interception return touchdown, the fastest speed reached by a ball carrier this season. That was in 2018.
That's unbelievable.
That's the craziest, most random thing. I mean, I don't know, man. You would not expect him at all.
Right. That's the most random name associated with the stat for sure.
Exactly. But, yeah, that's a good question. I'd say Marquez Valdes-Scantling, pretty.
God. Now we're getting into trolling, huh?
No, he is fast. He's very fast.
He's fast if you give him 2 minutes to get started.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And then he can't turn, though. Once he gets going, and then you ask him to turn, it's 5 steps this way, 6 steps that way, and then he finally turns his entire body.
And then half the time he'll catch it over someone. The other half, it'll just hit his collarbone. But, man, tough. I think Breida was a good name, too. I think he had some times that were clocked in the top 5.
I thought that his time against the Browns was clocked as the fastest. Do you remember the first play against the Browns? He took it 78 week 4 2019. I thought that was the fastest in 2019. And then 2020 was obviously Raheem Mostert had the 2 fastest times.
Are you sure Danny Dimes didn't beat that?
Obviously. I mean, Danny Dimes, according to Next Gen Stats, is faster than Lamar Jackson. So what are we even doing here? Come on.
He's faster than them all. Yeah, Breida ran in 2018. He ran at 22:09. So that is actually faster than McCourty. In 2019, Breida ran at 22.3 miles an hour.
True.
If his body could hold up, because I feel like he was always injured, and when he played, he was obviously dynamic, but yeah, man, that's insane. 22 miles.
And before we go, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. We didn't even mention Jonathan Taylor at all, but he's actually someone that I did think about a little bit because he had a phenomenal rookie season. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these running backs has a Zeke Elliott, Todd Gurley fall down. I wouldn't be surprised if he's right there next year. And then the other guy who I think is a little further off from him, but also showed some type of real, maybe good ability was Cam Akers. But Jonathan Taylor is amazing.
Both of those guys are awesome names. I thought you would say Cam Akers because he didn't come onto the scene really big time.
Right.
Until week 12. And then he just started picking up 100-yard games and racking them up. And I can only imagine what he'll do with Stafford in that offense now, and that I think McVay will kind of give him the Todd Gurley treatment and just have him as like the feature guy, because they didn't bring back Malcolm Brown, so the only other like main running back is Darrell Henderson. So I think Cam Akers feature back season, but we'll see. I'm happy I don't have to play that team twice, but it is.
Oh, look at you. But you have to play my best running back in the NFL in Dalvin Cook twice. And you have a terrible run defense who still doesn't have any size inside and still doesn't have a linebacker with the speed to run these guys down.
We did draft the D lineman in like the 4th round or 5th round. He's like 340 pounds, but he's more known for being a pass rusher for some reason, which I'm just not even surprised at that because it's the Packers. So,
all right, guys, we've reached the end. This was fun. Thank you all for joining us. We will actually be taking a small break from Blake and Vish Sports, 5 days. Both of us are going on vacation to an undisclosed location for the next 5 days. So we won't be streaming, but we will still be putting some videos up. If you like them, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, share, whatever you can. Every contribution from all of you guys goes a long way. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will probably be back next week on Friday or next week on Saturday. Stay tuned. We got some stuff with the NBA coming up, so make sure you check out those videos. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.